is Mehdi, and we're welcoming today Ed from Virtual Internships. Hi, Ed. Pleasure to have you.
Hi, Mehdi. Great. Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be
Well,
here.
yeah, it's a super cool, I think, time for virtual internships. So, really big thank you to join us today. So, virtual internships, obviously, a company that has, revolutionized a little bit the way we recruit. Especially for internship functions, etc. We're gonna go deep into that later. But maybe shall we start with a quick kind of intro? Tell us who is Ed, and what have you been doing prior as well to virtual internships?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, prior to virtual internships, myself and my co-founder actually ran a predecessor business called CRCC Asia. And that business was setting up in-person internships in Asia. First of all, in China, then later in Korea, Japan, Vietnam. And that was my original passion from my studies, and also Dan's passion from his studies. We were really focused on China, and also on this like very strong importance of graduates becoming more culturally aware and becoming more internationally employable. And during that journey, I guess we facilitated around 10,000 internships, which is very exciting. But along the way, we saw all of the barriers that exist. The big one is cost. Turns out that a 2-month service department in Shanghai is pretty pricey. Other barriers existed, like visas, like overprotective parents, or even students themselves being anxious and not wanting to go abroad and live there for 2 months. So we saw all these barriers, I guess, and at the same time, we had this feeling like we could find a way of better reflecting the future of work. And we actually started talking about online internships like back in 2016, I'm going to say. I was at a conference and I asked, I asked a panel what were some of the exciting innovations that they expected to see in the internship space. And I have to say, like, no one came up with any particularly exciting answers. And me and Dan were talking afterwards, and we're like, we should do this. We should really bring work experience online. And this is think back long pre-COVID. Like, people were not in this mindset they're in now. What we were seeing was already that online education was starting to be accepted and was valuable for certain groups and certain types of education. And then that online working was being increasingly adopted, again, for certain industries and certain groups. And we just thought, well, look, it's either side is accepting this online environment. We can do this for work experience. And we set up virtual internships in 2018. And we had some early adoption from universities, some very interesting programs, some very pioneering people who agreed to work with us. But I have to say, as you can imagine, COVID has been this amazing catalyst, this way of just opening people's minds to what could be achieved with online work experience. And for us, it is a lot about bringing down the barriers, bringing down the costs, and making the future of work accessible to all.
Yeah, it's super exciting times, and I'm really fascinated about what you said about 2016. Like, it's almost like back then it was not something that a lot of people thought of, right? It's like, for people, like an internship or a job is, okay, come to the office.
Well, I mean, Mehdi, I think, but when I was in university, almost all of the internet connections were still plug-in, right? You still have to be plugged into the wall in order to get good internet. And prior to that, it was telephones. Everybody had to be on the phone when you were at work, and you can't do those things working from home. Whereas now you can. Laptops have become much more affordable. The infrastructure doesn't need to be plugged in. So we were all in this environment that had been invested into. People had made this construct of the office, and we need to get everybody together so they can get plugged into an efficient cable, and then they can go to meetings together, and they can do all this stuff. When actually, in that decade or so, the technology had already moved on to prepare us for the possibility of online work, right? And it continues to move at a very fast pace, for sure.
It's really I think exciting times for a lot of employers and a lot of employees as well who want to gain experiences and not be constrained by the typical geographical borders that we have around the world, to kind of like and be able to experiment, not an internship with an Asian company or with the European company or the Canadian company or etc. And I think that's something that is very interesting. What do you see as the future, I would say, trends when it comes to the future of work? Because there is all this field about recruitment that you are in. There is a lot of discussion as well right now about empowerment, creating culture, a sustainable company culture, etc., keeping that kind of glue between the team, etc. What are the trends? Any other trends that you can see that are going to be really the game changers in the next years when it comes to future of work?
Yeah, I mean, if I could answer that succinctly in a sentence or two, then I'd be on to a winning streak. But I mean, at the moment, particularly here in the UK, we're in this environment of, very, very tight employment market, right? There are lots of vacancies, lots of positions. People are saying there's a shortage of talent and good good employees, good team, good staff, and that seems to be reflected in a few other countries worldwide. The Great Resignation has happened. People who maybe got affected by COVID have taken retirement a couple of years early, and that has tightened the availability of talent. So in that kind of short to medium term lens, I think a lot of companies are just making sure that what they are offering employees is what the employees want. It's got to be flexible, it's got to be accessible, the benefits have got to be there, and the culture has got to be there. So I think in some ways I think overall it'll be helpful for businesses to evolve. The more pressure there is, the faster evolution takes place in my mind. So whereas if there was if there were a huge surplus of employees waiting to jump back into the job market, then these companies wouldn't be under so much pressure to evolve and make sure their work environment and their online flexibility was correct, was right for the market. So I think we are in a period of very fast evolution. I think also, some of the trends that we're seeing, I think focus on that skills piece and, what employers expect or want from their incoming employees. And, I read somewhere that the kind of most important ones will be the adaptability, creative thinking, problem solving. And it makes complete sense, right? The faster everything is evolving, the more you come across new situations that nobody's really dealt with before. So you need team members and employees who can think on their feet, who can be adaptable and be comfortable in this volatile situation. So for me, I think those are some of the trends, and I guess that would go through to the world is going to favor those who can make the best of automation. If you're in a fairly low skilled job that a machine is likely to be able to do in 2 or 3 years, it's not a particularly good place to be in right now. So you want to try to just push yourself to think how can I become, invaluable as a human rather than something that could easily be taken over by a machine. I've already seen the favorite dim sum restaurants in Toronto have these robotic carts that are pushing around the dim sum. And, I actually was at a tech fair the other day where, a machine was basically pulling pints, pouring pints of beer by by the power of one's mind. So there's a lot of stuff happening. And at the moment we're looking at it like it's some kind of crazy new technology that in years past would have taken a few years to come to market, but actually everything's moving faster. So I think those will be implemented sooner than we think.
That's amazing. And when it comes to like the different as well challenges and also the different elements that you want to see grow within virtual internships, any kind of like hint on what's in the packages, like for virtual internships, what's next for you guys from a feature perspective, like especially for example, are you thinking of kind of like maybe pushing that kind of like self-serve element where a company comes on board, employees come on board, and there's almost like kind of some automatic dispatching in a kind of more fluid way, any kind of additional features? What's really next for virtual internships?
Yeah, I mean, all of those and a few more. We've got a couple of really great people who've joined our team recently to push us forward on product, on user experience, and also on the academic side, on actually like the learning outcomes and making sure that we remain data focused and able to pull out skills gain across the most in-demand skills for employers. It's something that we've always been passionate about, but in the early days, we were just handling, a few hundred candidates. So the data was less, let's just say less exciting. Whereas now we are talking about thousands. Last year was 5,000. Next year, I mean, this next 12 months will be double, possibly a little bit more than double that. So, really exciting amounts of data. And that comes with hopefully more ability to improve and iterate on our content a bit quicker. So I would say expect to see changes in the student-facing curriculum and the content, also the user experience. And you're absolutely right. This sort of self-serve elements and automation is very exciting for us. Our early days were still pretty human matching. Like, oh, we've got this intern and we've got this host company, and just like skills overlap. We can get so far with an Excel spreadsheet, and then now we can get so far with our CRM. But I think there are a couple of stages ahead of us which are really exciting in terms of being able to provide those matches and increase the quality of the match between the supervisor and the intern, and the skills that already exist and the skills that want to be built by both the intern and also by the host company as well.
That's super cool, and that's amazing. And I'm really excited to see what's next in the virtual internships world, and in the next features and elements that you're gonna launch. You have an amazing product, so I have no doubt that what's ahead of you is richer and bigger than what's behind you. And a big thank you again, Ed, for joining on this session. Super insightful to hear actually the side of the recruiting, from someone who is actually really making a change in the future of work. So big thank you for joining today.
Oh, well, it's a real pleasure, Mehdi. Anytime. I mean, I love talking about all of this stuff. It's something I'm passionate about, and I know from the questions you're asking that it's something close to your heart. So I appreciate the time and the bandwidth.
Thank you very much, Ed.